you please state your name and the company that you work for?
Sure. My name is Ernesto D. Mejia, and I work for Sigma Engineers as a civil engineering project engineer. I like to say I'm an expert in AutoCAD, but it evolves so often that there's more bells and whistles, but I know AutoCAD fairly well. And another area of expertise is structural design. Being as a civil engineer, there's a lot of avenues that you can take, and structural is one of them that I really enjoy.
My name is LaDonna Waters, and I work for the Texas Department of Transportation. I was born in North Richland Hills, Texas. I grew up in Oklahoma, spent most of my life there. After I graduated high school, I went into the military for 7 years. I lived in Germany for 3 years. I lived in Illinois for 7 years, down here for 7 years.
My name is Devin Jones. I work for Sigma Engineers Incorporated.
All right. So what's your area of expertise here?
My area of expertise is structural engineering and blast-resistant design. I was born here in Beaumont. I currently live in Silsbee, Texas. When I was in high school, I got a call from the College of Engineering, and they invited me to come take a tour of Lamar. And so I went and I met with all the different department heads of civil engineering, mechanical, and I was really taken by civil engineering. It seemed to be the most practical and the most interesting to me. So that's what led me to civil engineering.
Have you faced any adversity while or before attending Lamar University that threatened the completion of your degree?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I'd say the only struggles I've had when I was in grade school, I was diagnosed with dyslexia. So I had trouble reading and writing and things like that. So it took me, through my teenage years to kind of learn to cope with it. By the time I got to Lamar, my first few years were a challenge just because I read slowly and I had to read things. It just took me a little longer. But, I think with hard work and learning to cope and just kind of push through the frustration, I was able to move ahead and be successful.
Well, I think going back to college after so many years away from school was kind of a challenge. That was difficult. Also, being a woman in a field that is dominated by men is challenging at times.
So can you describe for us kind of a typical day in your work life and what that's like?
Sure. What we do here at Civil Engineers is we tend to build the projects on paper first. And what that does is gives the contract an idea, the clients an idea. It's just to predict the future of how the project is going to go, and also predict the behavior of the building concerning the structural sizes.
A typical day. There is no typical day. I have two main responsibilities. First is the structural design. That includes structural calculations, analysis, writing structural reports, reviewing drawings, things like that. And then the other aspect of it is project management. So that's meeting with clients, reviewing and coordinating drawings between the architects, the mechanical engineers, and putting all that together, and then making site visits, inspecting construction, making sure everything is up to code.
As a construction inspector, my day usually starts around 6 a.m. I go into the office, do the project diary for the day before, just explaining everything that was done on the project. And then I go out to the job site, meet with the contractor. We have a safety meeting and we discuss everything that's going to be done for that day. And then I check the plans and specs to make sure everything's being done in accordance with those. I test any materials that were being used that day, such as concrete or just different soils. Maybe have to send them to the lab to be tested. And stay out there and just make sure everything's being done correctly. And then my day usually ends around 5 or 6 at night.
What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of your job?
I think probably the most rewarding aspect is actually seeing a project that you've worked on be completed. It's really rewarding to be able to look at the plans for a project and see it on paper and then see it be built. I find that very rewarding.
All right, the most rewarding aspect is being involved in a project from conception all the way through construction. So we design a lot of buildings. That's our main thing we do. So being involved in the early stages of, meeting with an owner, figuring out what kind of building they need, what's the structural system going to be, what are the difficulties we have to overcome for this site or this type of structure, or what are the constraints, and then doing the design work, and then being involved in the construction process all the way up to you walk out and you see the final product. You see what you spent months designing and working on. You can finally kind of look at it and say, "Wow, this is I played a little part in this," and it's always exciting.
All right. So what are going to be some of the most important skills and abilities that are required for you to be successful?
I think being licensed is one of, as far as my career choice as a structural engineer. What a license does is add credibility to your experience, and it gives you more opportunity to do well. But you understand some engineering fields or disciplines, a license isn't quite as important. Like anything, a license is given to you so it can be taken away if you behave badly. So, I think it's important to be successful.
I would say the most important skills are problem solving and common sense, and those two go hand in hand.
I think you really need to have good attention to detail. You need to be somewhat analytical. You need to be able to look at the plans and know what you're looking at, and be able to, interpret all that, and be able to visualize the finished product when you're looking at it.
The least rewarding is sometimes things go bad, whether it's a bad owner or problems with a contractor, or sometimes just unforeseen things. We're going to build a building right here. When we get started, we find out that there's a high voltage duct bank right in the middle of it, and so now we're 3 months behind schedule and over budget. And, sometimes things just go wrong and it can get stressful.
Branching off of that, what kind of college courses would you say that you found to be the most applicable or important for your occupation?
The most important would be statics and mechanics. And the reason why is, if you know the fundamentals, if you know the basic concepts of engineering, then you can learn the other things. I can learn how to do structural steel design, timber design, masonry design, whatever. But it's those fundamental concepts of engineering that you need to learn and have a good, solid foundation to build it all.
I have to say my materials engineering course is very, very helpful. Part of my job requires me to test concrete and different soils and things like that. Before I took that class, I did the test, but I didn't really understand the why behind the test. And now, after taking that, I understand not only why we test it, but why it's important that it meets the specs.
So, and they deal with the fire, the handicap, the building envelope as far as the water infiltration, a lot of that. And then stuff. I'm like, like the
I want to look at the physics, right? I want to design this steel frame, right? So to support this, to support those shingles, right?
Yeah, I know. My roommate, he was like the second or third year into civil engineering, routine statics, and he was had 1,000-mile stare.
Yeah.
He says, "You know what? I don't like this anymore. I'm going to go business. I'm going to finance."
Right. I just don't understand these three equations: sum of force X, sum of force Y, and sum of moments. It's just I'm going to go to business then.
It was that in Calc 3. So when he went, "Screw this, I'm going in business," and he's doing really well. And plus, he found out more. His passion was more.
Sure. I mean, you have to have an affinity, right?
Yeah.
For whatever you want to do.
To be successful in your career, would you say that you are required to attain a professional license?
Yes, I think it is. What it does, gives you a minimal understanding of the basic engineering. So that's a minimal standard. So in my field, as part of a civil engineer, you can get your professional engineering license, but I also like to go further and go for your structural engineering license. It's another 16-hour exam that at one time you can take back to back, but the rules will change, so it's really.
It's not a requirement, but it is highly recommended, especially for future engineers. If you want to work with the public, any building, any road, or any infrastructure that the public is going to interface with, you have to be a professional engineer.
Do you have your PE license yourself?
I do.
All right. When would you suggest taking the FE exam and the PE exam as well?
The FE exam, take it while you're still in school, when you still remember thermodynamics and chemistry and all that other goofy stuff that you'll forget 6 months later. Right? And then, so you take your FE. When you pass that, you go and you get your job, and you work for 4 years and get experience. And then that's when you take your PE exam.
I would suggest taking the FE during your senior year of college. Probably in your fall semester, if you can fit it in. If not, definitely in the spring semester. If you take it while you're in college, it's going to be fresh on your mind. You're not going to have to study as hard.
And when do you intend to take the PE exam?
As soon as I get the minimum amount of experience I need, the 4 years minimum, I'll be taking a PE exam.
All right. Can you briefly describe for us one of your favorite or most exciting projects that you've had the opportunity to work on?
Oh, sure. I had the opportunity to work on a soil nail wall from beginning to end, and since it's geotechnical related and that's what I want to do, I found it very exciting to just see the whole construction process. Also learned a lot about the design process from that project, and it was really fascinating to just watch the whole thing come together.
Oh man, one of them interesting was there was this dry stack marina. What that means is they'll take boats out of the ocean and stack them up. Well, this particular project was a huge building that was in Fort Lauderdale. What it does, it took these long cigarette boats in the canal, brought them in, and there was an automated crane system that came in, picked up these boats out of fiberglass that are not meant to be taken out of the water. Because once you drop this fiberglass boat in the water, you unseal it, the uniform load from the water holds it together. Once you take it out, it'll literally can't fall apart. So the structure engineer I was working for developed a cradle system that was made to take it out of the water, lift it up, move it sideways, and store it automatically into these huge bays.
And then kind of just to cap up here, do you have any words of advice for our LU civil engineering freshmen or sophomore students?
Yeah, for freshman and sophomore, I think the two most important things is, number one, be involved. Get involved in ASE, Steel Grids, Concrete Community, Engineers Network, some technical society. Be involved, get some good practical engineering experience. And number two is learn to communicate. That's, I can't stress how important that skill is. You could be the most brilliant engineer, but if you can't, pass on your ideas, whether in writing, giving a speech, or in a meeting setting, if you can't convey your ideas, then it's useless. So communication is very